Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the SARG Superspeedway series for the last chance by NS Service 200. This is going to be the last chance for these drivers to be making it into playoffs. And we've got ourselves 5 drivers already locked in, 7 positions to be found. My name is Sam Dyer. With me is Tyler Riggs. And Tyler, it's time for us to have the last chance for these drivers to lock him in.
Oh man, it's going to be fantastic here tonight, Sam. It's something I've really looked forward to all week after last week's craziness. From a race standpoint, last race of the regular season, guys are going to be trying to get that big win. On top of that, though, as you mentioned with the points, it's just going to be wild. I mean, there's a few spots up for grabs, and there's at least 5, 6 drivers that truly it's make it or break it time right here.
Yeah, we got 5 drivers that have already locked in. Lucas Cram, Brandon Hoff, Connor Horn, Alex Bell, and Nick Olson all have won or locked themselves in based off of points. And a lot of drivers coming into this thing are top 10 based off of points. If you're in the top 10, you are good, you're locked in. But the last 2 spots, 11th and 12th place, that's when things start to be shaken up a little bit here, Tyler. We have one driver that has won outside of the top 20, but if he finds himself inside of the top 20, that's going to be Blake Treywick. He'll be locking himself into a position here in the wild card spot.
Yeah, folks, and this is kind of the unique element we were talking about where, as Sam mentioned, you want to be top 10 points. You're locked in there at the end of the regular season, win or not. It's not win, you're in, so to speak. But for positions 11th through 12th, those 11th and 12th positions would be decided either by the highest remaining point getter, or if you had a win and you're in that 11th through 12th spot, or 11th through 20th in points. So you mentioned Treywick right there, comes into tonight 24th in points, but he's only 16 points out of that top 20. And if he, has a good night and some other guys struggle, all of a sudden there's going to be a real wrench thrown in there as far as that 11th and 12th spot.
Yeah, if we see someone win inside of the 11th through 20th position, it can really shake things up. If Treywick also gets into that inside of the 11th through 20th spot, he'll be locking himself in. So there's a potential chance that even if you're pointed into 11th and 12th place, there's a chance that you will not be moving on to playoffs as really the closest battle of points-wise. I mean, that's the 10th through 11th spot where we've got ourselves Lucas Strayer and Jared Darling within 1 point of one another.
Yeah, and then, for that 12th spot, Kyle Major a little bit further back, about 20 points back. But guy I want to highlight here, he's on the front row again, his 4th pole of the regular season. Alex Fox there leading the green here. 4 poles, but he's sitting 21 points out of the playoffs right now.
NS Service Last Chance 200 is underway to figure out who are going to be the 12 drivers making it into the playoffs. Like you said, Alex Fox going to be getting the run on the inside, Lucas Cram on the outside as they take off here. Here at Daytona, it's very different than it was last week at Talladega. It's a lot narrower of a Superspeedway track, but still we could see some 3-wide action.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, Sam, of what the tone's going to be early in this race. We saw last week, it was very much guys trying to get their spots early, trying to be aggressive, set themselves up for some good stage points, obviously with the halfway stage coming into play. I wonder if it'll be a little bit more tempered this week. I still think you'll see some guys be aggressive, but there was a lot of carnage in the first half of that race last week.
Yeah, and expecting to see right now, I mean, we're already seeing the second pack of cars dropping back. I mean, that's going to be all the way back in 14th place. That's Treywick leading that group. That's already saying, hey, let's back off. Let's not get in an accident while our front 13 all running side by side.
Yeah, Treywick, we highlighted him. He's in a unique spot there. We know he's got the win, so he's really points racing to the max. I mean, I expect to see him get up there, for the stage and then disappear again, and then we'll be there hopefully at the end in his mind to set himself up with the maximum points total.
Yeah, speaking of the stage, lap 40, the end of lap 40, that will be the end of stage 1, and then we'll be racing to the end. And the way that this stages are set up for this race, we're going to be having 1 green flag pit stop through the first stage, and then 1 for the final section of this race. It's going to be a lot of racing action. That's if we stay green all the way, as a car is already going to be in the pits. That's going to be Gavin Jones in the 12 machine pulling it in.
He actually started from the pits, I believe, because he maybe had just loaded in. I don't think he took the grid, actually. So had some issues there and then got back in. So for him, though, points-wise, he is in a very good spot, comes in tonight 5th in points, has a big lead over that, 11th, 12th area. So probably not stressing too much, knowing he's only going to be a few laps down. I don't think it's the biggest issue.
No, it's really not, as you're seeing this massive group side by side still. And, the drivers are kind of keeping themselves in a pretty stable position of not really pushing anyone just yet. Everyone's still staying pretty, yes, everyone's side by side. There's not a lot of room being given, but this is pretty nice of the way of driving that these drivers have been going compared to the way that last week was going.
Yeah, definitely a 180. You mentioned the pushing. That's always something to tell you kind of early on. What is the tone going to be? Sure enough, nobody really, shoving too hard. I mean, you'll see some decent pushes down the straightaway, but compared to last week, guys were, hooked up all the way through the corners if possible. So I think a part of that is the fact that Alex Bell is not here tonight. We know he's kind of one of those aggressive guys in that sense. And I do not see Connor Horn in this field either. Generally, those two are two guys that are, setting that tone early and often, and with them out of the field, kind of takes away a little bit of the early aggression, I think.
Yeah, both those drivers already locked into playoffs, so they were not needed to be here for this race due to them winning and having themselves points-wise already inside of the top 10 and not going to be knocked out at all by missing this race. Alex Fox still leading the way. Lucas Cram, though, saying he wants the lead on that outside, 3 wide as the 9 car stuck in the middle.
Well, just as we talked about it being a Sunday drive in this first half of the race, now all of a sudden they put somebody in the second hole. It's Brandon Hoff. He'll fall back, and Cram looking to get that lead.
And they're still trying to shuffle it out. Looks like they might have figured out where they're at, as we're starting to see cars kind of bobbling up and down in front of the 9 machine. But, looking at their group, we came into this race, a total of 28 cars have taken off during this race at the moment. That really doesn't give a lot of wiggle room for some of these drivers that were outside of the bubble looking in. Really, I believe this might kick out drivers that are now in must-win scenarios. Ben McDonald now in a must-win scenario, being too many points outside of the top 10. So it really is looking rough for some of these drivers, but it's Superspeedway racing, Tyler. Anyone has a chance to win this race.
Well, and I think the big key is for those bubble guys that we're talking about here, your Brett Murphys, your Alex Foxes, Brady Floyd's, McMillans, those guys are on the outside looking in. They don't want to be the first guy out of this race, right? Because with 28 trucks, it's not quite, up in the 35 range, but if you're one of the first couple guys out, all of a sudden, now you pretty much wasted that opportunity. Doesn't mean you can't wreck out in this race, but you definitely got to be careful in the early going.
Yeah, we've already raced here at Daytona, 3 times. First car that won it was Connor Horn, and then we also had Nick Olson that won, and then Blake Trawick was the last driver to win here at Daytona. So, different drivers every single time we've been here, so gives an opportunity to some of these drivers. Hey, and this is anyone's chance, as we're just waiting and seeing when will someone try to make another brave move, because they've been, when they went 3 wide to get, Hoff pushed to the back, kind of, it was a bold move by Cram, but Cram loves to be up front leading the charge. Yeah,
and it was one of those moves where, it didn't get super dicey, because typically, when you get a 3 wide move like that, right, one of 2 things can happen. First, what we saw is, there's a decisive leader chosen off of it. It was Cram in terms of that outside line, and sure enough, everybody left Hoff out to dry. The second thing that could happen, which is more what we saw last week, is that Cram will make the move, hang Hoff in the second hole, but then you get other guys going, hey, I can make a move off this, and that's where the problems really start. Definitely the tone early is everybody just kind of minding their P's and Q's.
Yeah, and right now, Alex Fox, one of those drivers that we've seen have so many good runs, qualifying runs, that is, has not really had the car to finish these races. Fox has had 3 pole positions this season. You can add another one here tonight. So, it's wild how quick this 27 machine has been. It's just the consistency at the end. It just hasn't been there.
Well, and I think, for him, really a lot of it is at certain times when he does get shuffled back from that pole position, I think he finds himself just in some bad spots, either by, his own aggressive moves or just being caught up in the wrong place, wrong time. But he's definitely seen that. We mentioned, he's coming into tonight. He's 21 points back of that 12th place spot, which is a big gap. That is a lot to make up in one race. You mentioned how there's only 28 trucks, so I think he's in very much a win now mode. And you're seeing that early of he's trying to hold that bottom line best he can. I'm really interested to see here. There's Newsom in that 50 ducking to the outside now, try to take control of that line. But how aggressive is Fox going to be trying to control that lead?
Yeah, and as you saw, that little dot in front of our leaders, that's going to be Gavin Jones all by his lonesome. Everyone else still in some fashion connected to this group. As we're starting to see drivers in the middle pack go 3 wide, Gavin gets out of the way, but it's going to be Hoff leading the charge as they're 3 wide there for a second, as they're still scattered through the middle of the field.
Yeah,
Brett Jones. Brett Murphy, excuse me, gets a little bit out of shape there, almost getting to Robbie Lyons as they're 3 wide and now kind of getting stacked up in a way.
There's a guy back there in Dylan Parker that I think is looking to just have a good race day at 25. He's behind Hoff on the outside. He's one of those guys that isn't going to make it, I don't think, even with the win, but you always want to have good momentum, right? You always want to finish the best you can. We'll see how those guys kind of play into this race today.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these drivers looking through the field. I mean, we've got Blake Trewick, who we've notified has got a win, but outside of the top 20 in points. So that win is not helping him at all. Right now, running back in 15th position. And back around where you see Gerald Darling as well as Nick Olson. Other cars just waiting for their chance to start making a move forward.
Yeah, definitely a patient game being played here. I think is what we'll really start to see the action is that we get this green flag stop out of the way, and then guys are racing for the stage. That's when you'll kind of see it pick up. But looks like we might have a 3 wide situation here coming on for the lead.
3 wide here for second place. Now going to be back for third place as drivers are scattering everywhere. And Hoff going to be on the outside trying to get some help, and he's getting a little bit. And it's that 2-truck tandem on the outside that's still running strong. And it just seems like that middle lane was not really grouped up, nor was the bottom lane, but more cars getting in line. It's going to move up as Hoff gets bumped up a little bit by Lyons.
Yeah, Lyons had kind of teased Hoff and Parker back there. He dropped back up behind him to maybe push him 3 wide on the outside, but instead and then a little bit of a wiggle from Derek Newsom. That's going to send him scattering. This might be interesting.
This driver's still scattering everywhere as they're going to the 50 is going to be Newsom, who's just going to be losing a lot of time. Now Cram going to be losing ground as he didn't get a good run through 3 and 4. Now going to be getting a little bit of help from Fox. But, I mean, this is the most scattered we've seen these trucks all season long, it seems like. But still 3 wide action in the middle of this first group.
Yeah, you mentioned that outside line, and we saw it with Connor Horn and Alex Bell the first time we were here of just, you get 2 trucks that are willing to just hook up with each other. You could make a lot of time up in that third line, especially if you just got a big line of 2x2 because, the momentum is just not there. Speaking of Robbie Lyons, though, here he comes, get a big push from Clint Spillman. Spillman looks to be that guy maybe trying to fill the void that Bell and Horn have left not being in this race tonight.
Yeah, Clint Spillman, who was inside of the top 10 coming into this race, looking for a solid run. And I believe based off where points are, if Spillman has a bad day, Darling has a good one, we could be seeing, Spillman being a car that's out in the 11th position, as that gap really from our top 11 to 12th and back is quite massive. I don't think anyone's going to really be gaining on that gap.
Yeah, and really for, guys like Spillman, Kobe Wells, and Robbie Lyons, and we mentioned Stray earlier too, you kind of hit it on. They're just looking to have good days. They don't have to win the race. They really just need to kind of, finish top 15 or so, and they're pretty much locked at that point. So if you're Spillman here in that 88, you got to be a little careful. I know you want to get up there and, help secure your position by leading maybe a couple laps and being up there for the stage. But you can't get too aggressive and end your night early.
Christopher Lewis going to be in the middle lane, having himself Chris Olson as well as others on the outside, trying to make a move work here. But right now, leading the way, Robbie Lyons on the inside, Spillman on the middle, and Nick Olson on that third groove. As we're inching closer and closer to that pit stop here, Tyler, it's within 6 laps now, and we're going to start to see drivers coming into the pits. So when do drivers start to single file out? Because they're 3 wide, and it's not looking like they're going to stop anytime soon.
Well, with these guys, we might not see them single file out until the lap of pit stops. I mean, they're all pretty comfortable with each other at this point in the season, so generally that communication can happen really quick when they're looking to pit. But I still think you got a few laps, obviously, before you get there. It's just a lot of jockeying for a position. I'm kind of surprised, generally, as a driver, when you're in there and you're getting ready for green flag pit stops, the goal is ultimately just make sure you're with the lead pack. You don't have to be in the front of it. You can be on the tail end of it, and just make sure you pit, where you can get some help. So I'm kind of surprised we saw this much shuffling, but it looks like it's starting to sort itself out a little bit.
Yeah, everyone is now just deciding, hey, if you find a spot on the inside, drop it down. And that is what we are seeing at the moment. Also, something to point out for these drivers is we're getting closer and closer to pit road, is the fact that these drivers do have a fast repair to work with. And this is kind of what we've been seeing all season long. It's the first stage is kind of when all the drivers get their aggression out. And then we have a lull period for about 20 to 30 laps. And then the final 10 laps of the race gets extremely aggressive, where we start to see drivers kind of wrecking it all over the place. So interesting to see how we were 3 wide for a second there, but now you're starting to see it. Pit road is about to get very busy very soon.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the guys being aggressive. I really think after we get through these pit stops, green flag wise, as long as we get to them, that's when you're going to start to see things really pick up, especially about the last 10 laps of the stage. Because take a guy like Murphy up there, for example, in the 11. He's currently in position, right, for what would be stage points, while Kyle Manger, guy he's trying to chase in terms of locking himself in the points, is about 7 spots back. So in that situation, he stands a lot to gain by just being in that top 10. You're going to see that with quite a few guys.
Yeah, and everyone's still trying to figure out where they want to be. And the aggression level. Also, when we start to see green flag pit stops, that's when we start to see a lot of drivers really splitting up from one another. We start to see that defined second group from everyone else. But that second group that we usually talk about is very far back, as we've got this front group who's getting ready for pit stops here. But he dropped back to 22nd place. You got Derek Newsom, who's all on his lonesome. And then you go back even further. You got Ben McDonald and a couple of other cars that are just kind of lingering and waiting, being over 30 seconds away from this front pack.
Yeah, and for a lot of these guys, I understand it, especially McDonald. We talked about how he was so far back from at least pointing himself in. He's pretty much in a must-win, right? He's in the top 20, but pretty much needs a win. A guy I'm kind of questioning why he's so far back is Jake McMillan at 21, because he came into this one pretty close. I'm talking 2 points away from Kyle in the 25. So interested to see him early on take the strategy of being so far back, because if Kyle scores stage points and then McMillan doesn't, that's big. That's a points increase all of a sudden there for Mr. Manger in that 25.
Yeah, and the biggest difference for this group up here that's so far back is pits are coming. And like I stated, a lot of things are about to change on where you're going to be running. If you have a bad pit stop, you're going to lose a lot of time, and they're already about 20 seconds away from going a lap down. If they have a major issue, they're going to go a lap down here, and it doesn't matter if a stage caution comes out. The stage caution comes out for these drivers, because there might be too many cars a lap down for you to get your lap back.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned just having a perfect pit stop. That applies for anybody in this field right now. This is the money race, if you will. You cannot afford a big mistake. And we've seen a couple of times throughout the season where guys have really, put themselves at odds with what they were trying to accomplish just because of a minor 2 major slip in pit road. So be something to monitor for sure.
Yeah, we've seen some minor slips, and we've also seen some pretty major slips where drivers just come in with too much speed, go into the infield grass, and they have to come back and losing a lot of time. So expecting to see a lot of drivers shuffle it up, because we have entered pit road zone, and here they all come. Down pit road, they scatter coming in.
Yeah, trying to look through the fitter. Contact with Gale.
Others.
Into Brady Floyd. Oh, no, that's 2 guys that did not, Murphy especially, did not need that contact.
As drivers are going to be going through one another. You saw there on Blake Traywick, who just stayed on pit road. Also, Traywick and others going to be overshooting their pit stalls. We saw about 3 drivers overshoot theirs.
Yeah, a lot to sort out there with the contact going on. We'll have to see. I think you'll see 2 defined groups coming out of that first group. The guys that had the clean stops, and obviously a few of those guys that are now going to be a bit further back because of their mistakes.
And we'll wait and see how drivers get through here, as we've got a total of 6 cars on that lead group that still. And also that group that was so far back, they came in with this first group. As we're waiting to see how they're going to come in, it looked like Hoff almost hit that inside wall coming in. came a little bit sideways. But those drivers that were so far back, they're now a lap down as they're trying to get back up to speed. I mean, this is kind of disastrous for some of those drivers.
Yeah, and that's going to turn into a bit of a fight of who's the lucky dog, right? Especially for a guy like McMillan, he cannot afford to finish the stage a lap down, be trapped a lap down. The big part here, though, is too, we mentioned about clean pit stops. So this second group that was a little bit smaller, obviously, maybe has a bit of advantage because they can get in and out a lot cleaner than that big group. Although it looks like the 71 Jordan Clark there having some issues himself, being a little slippery off pit road. Did spin, but almost did. Looks like Brandon Hoff in the 9 might be the guy that leads this little 6-car group coming out.
Well, that large first group that came in, it's only about 3 cars that are connected at this moment, and another 3 cars behind them as everyone's trying to get back up to speed. Looking like Lucas Cram, when everyone gets up to speed, should be leading this group, but as I say that, I don't think so. I think Brandon Hoff and Clint Spillman and Maker might have gotten up to speed fast enough. But here comes Lucas Cram and others as following suit. But Gingrich, another driver that had a very poor pit stop, but luckily is at the tail end of this group. As I say that, he is too far back from the draft. He's going to be losing a lot of time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how it splits out here because you can see it. We'll update it as we go here, but the time difference between the guys that had the clean pit stops and all those issues with that big first group, very noticeable early on at least. I mean, we're talking, you pick up that second group with, Kyle Major in there, doing pretty good in that 5, found a way to get the track position he needs. And then you go back to Balto, you mentioned Quinn there, he's getting caught up by Robbie Lyons and Steve Miguel Murphy. So those guys that did have issues, they were full, about 7 seconds or so back already in terms of, that first group. So that's huge right there. It speaks to, why you got to be clean.
And we still have ourselves a lot of laps until we get to the stage caution, which is going to be at the end of lap 40 for these drivers. And what's crazy to see here, Tyler, is we're already seeing our leaders catch up to lap traffic as they are catching up to the end drivers here of Howell, and then also you got Sawyer here. I mean, this is disastrous for some of these drivers that were just lingering in the back for way too long.
Yeah, and that's why, especially in a league setting, where guys know each other pretty well and can push well, you have to be really careful about how far you get back if you're going to lag off the front pack because perfect situation here with pit stops, you get too far back and then all of a sudden these guys are very good at getting in and getting out clean and then getting hooked up again, so you don't really gain any time and you just continue to lose and lose and lose, and unfortunately that's what we're seeing with a couple of guys.
We'll say, though, that second group that came in from our initial first lead pack, they did a great job of staying up front. If you had a clean a clean pit stop, you were able to stay with this front group. Jared Darling was one of those key factors that I saw that was in the back of the field, and back of that back half was able to gain a lot of positions up to 9th place now. But that major group that we were talking about, Ben McDonald, Newsom, and others, they're only about 8 seconds away from going a lap down here. And if our leaders really get up to speed, which right now they're actually losing time that last lap compared to this back half of the field that's about 8 seconds back.
Right, and that's just the other thing is too, now this front group getting 2x2 finally, right, not being single file anymore. So if you're anybody behind them, whether it be that second big group that we're talking about or the guys that are about to go a lap down, you got to make sure that, hey, everybody be on the same page here, being linked up single file, because that's the only way you're going to really catch them with them being 2x2.
Yeah, as we're waiting and seeing, I think a lot of right now, we know Superspeedway races, everything can change in a blink of an eye, so it's kind of hard to judge where drivers are at now and where they're going to be at the end of the race, because we have that stage break at lap 40. So, these drivers, they might be running on the back half now. As long as they don't go a lap down, they still have a chance here. As, Tyler, just looking at these drivers, I don't know if just looking at this front half of drivers, it's interesting that we're missing Connor Horn and Alex Bell. We're used to them being the front runners that are always up front, making those deep charges. Now we're just seeing Hoff, Menger, and Cram, who have been up front all season long, as they're just leading the pack.
Yeah, and they're being pretty calm about it. I mean, I think everybody realizes, especially after these green flag stops, these first 9 guys back to Darling, there's no pressure for them to really race for stage points other than, making a move to gain a few stage points, right? Because it goes to the NASCAR format at 10-1. And these are all guys, for the most part, that are, looking good when it comes to the playoffs as is. So it's a very chill group. And really, I think the big thing here as we get to the stage, you're going to see, you got Shane Howell here in this 38, right? Leading this front pack, trying to make sure he stays not a lap down, and that's a tough spot to be in because all it takes is that outside line get a push, and you get shuffled back a bit. Now you're first car lap down, but you don't want to be first car lap down, right? You don't want to have to do that. So that might kind of play a bit of a factor. Is he going to be aggressive in blocking some of that, or is he just going to kind of let him have it here?
Well, I mean, he's kind of already shown his teeth by making the block on Lucas Cram when that group first caught up to this lap traffic and putting a block on the 44. And then dropping down and now leading this group. I mean, Howell's kind of just shown, hey, I'm going to be up front. I don't want to go a lap down once the stage comes out, because there's always that possibility of another car somehow being the first car a lap down ahead of him, or he could be the car that's caught up in an incident in front of him.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, and especially with him seeing that they're kind of reeling in, and I don't know if they'll get to him, but they are reeling in that group of about 4 drivers back here, McMillan, Stanley, Newsom, and McDonald. It's close enough to where they're going to have to watch it, and I definitely think Hal's got that in mind, knowing that that's a possibility, like you're talking about.
For sure. As these drivers continue on, a big thanks to NS Services, as they're going to be the main sponsor here for the playoffs and for today's race for the NS Service Last Chance 200 here at Daytona. They are a great service that are here for safety inspection company. They're going to be primarily working in the New England and all around to Arizona. They're a great company that does great inspection work. Check them out for more information at the sargomotorsports.com, as they are also partnered up with them, as well as the MR Motors and Tracks Modified Racing Team. It's great service. Check them out there.
Yeah, they've worked, pretty reputable stuff. I mean, worked with Harvard University, and as you mentioned, some other big projects kind of throughout the country. So definitely give them a look and support them, because, hey, it's always cool to see the, real life stuff kind of mingle with the iRacing side of things, where you get, these guys wanting to be part of something very cool here on the iRacing side.
Still odd looking back at this group that's being ran down by our leaders. I mean, we got Alex Fox, Brady Floyd. I mean, those are 2 drivers that have been up front for a lot of the races this season, but it's kind of that luck that we talk about that you really kind of need to be in the right position. As long as they stay on the lead lap, like we've been saying, they are good to make it to the end. Another coming up to 9 laps to go until we're coming to the end of the stage. And Tyler, it's not looking like we're going to be seeing a lot of action from this front group. Do you think that anyone is going to be making any bold moves in this front group to try to win this stage?
I think you will see eventually, maybe, especially like Colin, that 5 right there. I mean, he can help himself the most out of this front pack in terms of, gaining that stage win, right? That really, all of a sudden, not only gets him closer to Darwin, but more importantly, separates him from the middle by a good distance. And guys like Brady, Floyd, Murphy, just because of their issues already early in the first half of the race. So if there's anybody to make a bold move, that's probably my pick right there. Other than that, I don't see anybody in this top 10 that really, needs to or probably will make it there.
I mean, also, as we're coming closer and closer to the end of the stage, how important is it learning from your first pit stop, green flag pit stop, and trying to transfer that over to possibly our second green flag pit stop for the final 40 laps of this race? I mean, is there anything that you really can learn from those pit stops, or is it you've raced so much at these Superspeedway tracks, you kind of know how to take these pit stops?
Well, with, Superspeedway racing, especially play track racing here, the really big things you learn, if you had a mistake on that first pit stop, as long as it wasn't something like you're spinning out, maybe you overran your box or you had to really brake check late to not speed. It's just learning where you need to hit your marks, right? Now, I think these guys at this point of the season all have a pretty good sense of that. So the biggest thing for them, instead of necessarily hitting the marks, might be if you're pitting with the big group like we saw in this first cycle that you've got to really be aware of who's around you and how you guys are spread out. Because you can get really spread out, and it feels nice, but then all of a sudden that pit road shrinks it a bit, right? You got to kind of get tight again to make sure everybody gets in pit road.
And we've been watching this front pack. They get, like we said, we got Howell going to be leading that inside groove, but you drop 18.5 seconds back. That's when you start to see 11th on back here, all single filed up, and this group just doesn't look like they're big enough to try to make a move to try to gain any time. As we've been seeing, they've just been losing time and time again every lap.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating position to be in when you're a driver. You really, you're telling all those guys, hey, let's be kind to each other. Let's single file it out. Let's, really dig to, get that pack. But at this point, as you mentioned, it's just, there's no chance. So you're just kind of hanging out. There's not much you can do. There's no reason to really be aggressive back there to gain spots because you're going to get the stage caution anyways. Definitely a rough spot to be in mentally to try to deal with that at this part of the race.
As the laps continue to tick away, we are now within 7 laps of the yellow coming out for our stage at the end of lap 40 for these drivers. And Tyler, I mean, overall, is there anything that really these drivers can take away so far in this race?
I think it's apparent that third line again is going to be a factor whenever somebody wants it to be now. We mentioned with Bell and Horn not here, usually they're the Pied Pipers lead that third line. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe it's a Spillman or a Cram, maybe even an Olsen that says, hey, I want to be that guy tonight. Because at the end of the race, that will definitely come into play. I mean, that is a spot to where you could gain so much momentum, sneakily too, because we saw a lot of 2x2. I think you'll see a little bit more of the same for at least probably to maybe after that first, pit stop after the stage. So, believe in the power of the third line. Other than that, I'm interested to see when these guys do start really pushing somebody, if they're kind of comfortable with it, because when you go full kind of race without doing it, all of a sudden then it becomes a little alien to you to do it again. So,
yeah, I mean, you talked about the 5 machine being a car that might want to make a push here at the end. Another driver that might think about making a push here is going to be Jared Darling, who's outside of the top 10, running in 11th place, 1 point out from Lucas Strayer. So, I mean, right now, Darling is in a great spot with Strayer running just in front of him. I mean, in striking distance is Strayer from Darling. But, I mean, do you start hoping that you can start making a move forward, or is Darling maybe a little bit too far back and might just wait?
I think he might give it a shot here at the end of the stage. The big thing for Darling that I think he might realize as well, it's tough with Strayer being ahead of him, right? Because there's only a point of separation. That being said, there will be stage points involved. I think the key for Darling is not necessarily where he has to finish ahead of Strayer in this stage. It's more about, maybe finishing one position back from him at max 2. But with guys like Robbie Lyons, who, he said 9th in points. He's only 6 up on Darling right now. So he's back there outside the top 10. He's not in position to get stage points. All of a sudden, that's kind of a spot to where even if you can't get any more positions, you've at least gained a little bit, tighten it back up on a guy like Robbie Lyons.
Yeah, it's always crazy how much stage points can affect on the points for as a whole. I mean, you might be thinking, hey, I'm running back because I want to make sure I'm there at the end, but some of these drivers that are running up front, they need to get these stage points, close it in like you said, and have a chance running here to the end of this race. But stage is coming. We're within 3 laps now, Tyler, of getting us to that stage.
Yeah, and I really look for a guy like Cram to maybe try to make a move and just kind of assert his dominance. Him and Hoff both have been real aggressive and just trying to, make sure they stay up front and have control of things. And I think that's the way to go, all season long. That's just proven, I think, for the most part, to be the most effective way to ensure you have a good day. Because not only do you say, hey, if I wreck in the back half of the race, I've at least got my stage points to fall back on. But generally, if you're a guy up there and you're, controlling the race, it's very rare you're going to find a spot to where all of a sudden, speaking of, there goes Cram getting a little bit of a bad bump from Olsen.
And I'm surprised that they saved it. They continue running, but they are scattered. As up front, it's going to be the car that's trying to stay on the lead lap. The 38 of Howell is going to be trying to run as strong as he can as he's being pushed by the 9 of Brandon Hoff that's trying to win this stage. Coming to the end, this would be technically the white flag of stage number 1 about to be thrown.
Yeah, Shane Howell in a really good spot, like you're talking about, to hang on for not going a lap down, because it's just him and Hoff right now up front of everybody with all the craziness that just happened. I got to applaud this top 10 for not wrecking that. I thought it was done when Cram was about 90 degrees to the left right there, but they found a way to keep it going. Definitely a few fenders banged up, but I think they'll take that over the alternative of having the big wreck.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Hoff's got a great buffer. He's got himself a car that's a lap down of Derek Stanley, going to be between himself and Menger right now, as the battle for the lead really not looking like it's going to be heating up, as Brandon Hoff looking for the stage win here as he's coming out of 4.
Yeah, easily in control, but Kyle, big second in this stage, definitely going to help himself out and try to, maybe put himself in, be in that 12th position right now. He's in the second wild card spot, so that's big for him. But other than that, kind of I wouldn't say uneventful first stage, but definitely you could tell the tone was a complete 180 from last week.
Derek Newsom, Ben McDonald, Jacob McMillan, Alex Fox, Brady Floyd are probably baffled that they didn't get ran down within 2 seconds of our leader, of almost going a lap down. The stage win keeps them on the lead lap, as well as Howell staying on the lead lap himself, which then is going to be giving Jeremy Jones of the 81 machine the lucky dog coming here at this caution.
Yeah, big break for those guys that you just talked about, Newsom, McMillan, and Fox, who with pole sitter once again finds himself in a bit of a rough spot, but that's big for their momentum. And now, those guys, McDonald, Fox, and McMillan at this point, Floyd to a certain degree as well, they're just all saying, hey, we got to go get it in this next part of the race, because they're pretty much, if they win, they're in. If they don't get that win, well, they miss the playoffs.
Yeah, they are in a must-win scenario for sure for these drivers, as continue to wait and see as everyone is getting situated here, as went green all the way through. We had that one hiccup coming to what would be the white flag at stage 1, but I'm so surprised on the fact that these drivers were able to keep it straight. Everyone coming in, going to get tires, fuel, and we'll see if anyone makes a mistake here on pit road, getting ready to go green to the end.
It's a little easier to make sure you don't make a mistake under caution pits, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about flying into pit road and not speeding. Really, it's just about hitting your marks in the boxes. But no, I'm curious to see, especially a guy like Treywick, who we know we highlighted, he's got the win, needs to get to the top 20 in points. How aggressive are they going to be early on the stage? Or is it going to be more of the same from the first stage, where at least they're waiting until after the pit stop, or we're going to see them really start to dice it up? I don't know if I can answer that.
Yeah, I think at this point, the strategy kind of has to be make sure you're in that front group that pits either first or second, but you need to make sure you are in that front pack before they come into the pits to make sure that you can have the best opportunity to be with the group that gets out the best out of their pit road. And I think that's the key a lot, is make sure when you're coming to 20 laps to go, you are in the position to pit with that lead group, and that you're not out of position or running 18, 30 seconds back from our leader when you need to be gaining a lot of points this race.
Well, and I think the big thing that you're talking about of being up in that front group is not so much that you have to pit first, but it gives you the option, like we saw with guys like Hoff, where they stayed out from the first group, and all of a sudden it was a group of 6, and it made their pit stop really nice and clean, right? And made sure that they stayed up there. So that's kind of the big thing. It gives you the choice to say, okay, let me find the right spot to get that last pit stop in.
As the drivers are going to be I believe they're going to be getting ready to go here. Some drivers going to be thinking about getting their cells packed full of fuel so they can go an extra lap or so. As drivers are coming into the pits, they were going to be getting ready to go green here shortly. And we'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back to all the action.
Since the VFW was founded, their mission was really to look out for the veterans community, to make sure that our nation upholds its promise to really care for the service member, the veteran, and his or her family. There are several ways that the VFW fights for veterans today. The top services include disability claims assistance, advocacy on Capitol Hill and with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We also offer scholarship opportunities, and then also volunteerism. For me personally, when I came back from Iraq, my life experience was drastically different from those around me, and the veterans of foreign wars really spoke to me. The reason I would encourage veterans who have served overseas today to join the VFW is because this is your organization. The VFW is for veterans. Every generation, a new generation of leaders steps up in the veterans of foreign wars and fights for the veterans community.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the SARG Superspeedway NS Service playoffs as these drivers are getting ready to see who will make it into the playoffs here in this last chance race. Drivers are lined up, ready to go green. The pace truck pulls off. Green flag back into the air as we're getting 37 laps to go. And a lot of drivers decided with one to go to come to the pits. And Tyler, it's a bold strategy to go to the back of the field, but kind of a smart one for drivers that are thinking long term.
Yeah, and for guys that are very secure in what they're already standing in the points for playoffs, but did create a unique situation where we only had about 4 trucks 2x2 at the front because everybody else was kind of single filed out because of the late pits, right? So definitely interesting there, and I look forward to seeing who mixes up here in the front of the pack. You got a guy like Christopher Lewis in that 95. He's not racing for anything other than just trying to get a win. He's not worried about the playoffs. I don't think he's raced a lot of races in this series yet, so we'll see how many of those guys decide to kind of mix it up here.
Yeah, Lewis, I believe also Clark is kind of in a pretty similar situation, kind of a little bit too far back points-wise to be making a dent, but still some very hard racing that we're going to be seeing for these drivers. Clark actually looking back, yeah, he's going to be too far back from making it a charge points-wise, but we're already starting to see drivers side by side and almost 3 wide action there. As up front, Robbie Lyons and the 5 of Kyle Menger are going to be leading the way at the moment, but here comes Murphy and also Darling as those drivers trying to push as much as they can to be making a move forward.
And they got a little help there from Hoff. Darling with maybe a little bit of a slip going into the corner, but no issues there. But as what it does there is all of a sudden that outside line does not have the momentum to work with, so that inside line really going to prevail.
Yeah, Alex Fox back in 7th place on that inside line, probably one of the last cars on the inside. He was about 3 seconds away from going a lap down until that stage caution came out, now finding himself in the top 10. I mean, that's kind of what pit stops and a little bit of switch up a strategy can do for some of these drivers that are trying to make a push forward. As Robbie Lyons trying to look for a win here, has not won yet, but still a car that kind of was a favorite to get a win at some point this season.
Yeah, especially early on, he looked like he was a strong truck out there in the first couple of races. He was one of those guys that definitely was part of the bad luck crew, if you will. Missed last week, so I think going into the playoffs, you definitely like some of that momentum, right? Everybody does. You want to be the guy that feels like you're the most dangerous person out there in terms of being able to compete for a win. So other than that, though, I'm really curious to see what Alex Fox does here, Sam, because we mentioned earlier, despite having the 4 poles, it's pretty much in a must-win situation tonight. How aggressive is he going to try to be here in the second stage?
It's going to be interesting to see how aggressive he wants to be. As I'm watching the 52 of Stephen Gall, going to be bobbing in and up and down, really trying to figure out how to hold his line. Also, I think it's part of it is trying to figure out how to hold your line, and part of it's just trying to make sure your bumper sticks with the car in front of you, just in case you get a massive run and you can bump someone.
Well, not only that, you might have to do some slight checkups, and that kind of forces you up a little bit to make sure you don't hit a guy. And then if you're up on him, right, like Steven there in that 52, he's kind of trapped in a box, right? Got people outside of him, got somebody in front of him, somebody behind him, and so you have to watch those temps. Generally, the trucks are a bit better, obviously, than the Xfinity or Cup cars, but still, some to monitor, and it can be tough to try to follow the guy in front of you sometimes.
It really can. Now, the driver we had our eyes on, where was he going to finish? Could he have a possible enough points? That's Blake Trawick back in 21st position, having Rada on his back bumper in that 8 machine. Both those drivers, Rada last week somehow snuck out with a top 5 position after a lot of carnage that happened at Talladega. Speaking of carnage and possibilities here, 3 wide up front.
Yeah, we talked about at the stage break, who's going to say, hey, I want to control that third line. I want to be that guy. And it looks like Brandon Hoff and Dylan Parker trying to lead that charge. They're going to use it to get to the front of the second line there.
Hoff, who came in with 1 lap to go to just top off, start in the back, now has made his charge forward. And we had a lot of drivers there, Tyler, that decided to do that quick stop at the end. And that's going to split these drivers up really fuel-wise when we have to have a green flag pit stop if we get to that point.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious of why they did that, just because generally what we've seen, you're not worried about fuel in terms of, as long as you make it to basically halfway in the stage, you're good to go. Maybe they just wanted a little bit of that extra control to really, we were talking about deciding which group to pit with. That kind of what comes to my mind is for a guy like Hoff to come back in, top it off. He's just basically saying, hey, I'm going to put myself in a spot to where I'm not desperate to pit, immediately after the first group pits. Maybe he wants to wait 5 laps or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, these drivers all going to be trying different strategies for sure now with having that extra lap to work with. Also, if you feel like, hey, we're still side by side for a little bit too long, I want to go another lap to make sure that this group just gets out of the way, they've got that option to work with. As still, I mean, Parker looks like the best pusher right now, and Hoff looks like the best front driver at the moment. We saw Lucas Cram being one of those drivers, but he's been lingering now around 8th, 10th position, kind of just stuck on the high side line, not getting that much help really to try to go 3 wide, nor do I think that he's really trying to, as cars on this back half, a little scrambling back there.
Yeah, for a guy like Cram, you mentioned maybe peeking 3 wide, but not wanting to do it. Really, it's going to take getting the right guy up there, right? And I don't know. I know him and Olsen obviously very good together, but it's one of those deals where you got to find the right run, and then you got to make sure that the guy's ready to go. And sometimes that's a little bit harder to coordinate.
Yeah, and really watching and seeing where cars are going to be. There are a couple of cars off pace, and I think there might be some just engine issues for those drivers. As I say that, actually take that back. All the drivers are still stuck up here. There were drivers that were 1 lap down that I saw in my telemetry that were throwing me off for a second.
Well, on the front here, Hoff dove it down to the bottom to take control of that inside line, but Robbie Lyons using that move where he knows the guy on the outside is a strong pusher, pops it up there, gets in front of Parker, and he's going to try to take the lead back.
That's been really the move that we've been seeing all season long, really, is pop up right when there's space, get the help from the outside line, and then push past our leader. And usually Hoff's been that driver that's been really notorious for doing that, as well as Connor Horn, just to try to make a move to get up front. Robbie Lyon wants to be following the way right now in the 97 machine, and really it's not a bad call to be up front, but I think really that when we're going to be seeing a lot of changing up and switch up has to be pit road, because it seems like everyone's kind of in cruise control 2 wide.
Yeah, and it's more the same from that first part of the race here before the stage break, which not totally surprised about. I think the gloves are going to come off, as you're mentioning, after those pit stops. Until then, it's all just about trying to jockey for the position and make sure you're in the right spot, so to speak. And that will be one of those sayings where I think it'll be more defined this time. Maybe get, not so many issues as we saw the first time around, where you had guys almost spin on pit road. And, we still got a good group, but I'm really, really interested to see who decides to play the mind games.
And speaking of mind games, here comes Brett Murphy, who's going to be shoving Parker to the outside on his lonesome, and that 11 machine saying, I want to lead the way now. As you're seeing Murphy, who's outside of the top 12. There they go through the middle. Clark goes on the inside. Parker going to go up. Spillman involved. More cars involved in that calf.
And there it is. All it was one.
More. Lucas Strayer somehow, I believe, might have snuck through that.
That happened in a really bad spot. I mean, Parker, you mentioned he got shoved up there a bit. They did him a little bit dirty. I think he was trying to find a spot back into the top lane and just barely caught the 27 there of Alex Fox, and that caused that one. Got Parker loose, and there it was from there.
Dylan Parker nowhere to really go in this situation. As you see, coming through the tri-oval, trying to find space, comes in and nowhere really to go. Rada comes in, contact movement on that 40 machine, had a little bit of contact, but not too much. Man, really everyone scattering after the contact was made. And looking back, I think the 8 car might have been the one that got the most action. As we're going to take another look at how this accident went on the back half of things. As you saw there, Fox getting onto the 23 and everyone else nowhere to go. Up in the air, the 85 involved.
I think the 88 of Spillman got lucky and kind of slipped through it. And look at Blake Trawick just saying, hey, I'm just going to go through the grass and avoid all this, making sure that he stays clean. He needed that. I mean, immediately dived it down as soon as he started seeing the wrecks.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to take an onboard here with Trawick as you're talking about, I mean, coming through Trawick and that cow-looking truck. Sees the carnage, just ducks it onto the grass. So that's the safest place. And yes, there might be some like 1 to 2 seconds of damage that might be optional for these drivers if you go through the grass, but I mean, it's worth it by keeping your whole car in contact. Another car we're going to be taking a ride along with is going to be Strayer, who had another had to drive through all of that, and I think he might have gotten through.
Yeah, and another one too to watch there as you watch Strayer here might have been the McMillan. He had nowhere to go, unfortunately for him. It's a tough break. There's a good group of guys right there, Sam, that you're highlighting of just did not need that wreck, and all of a sudden now they're going to have to burn that fast repair. In a situation like this, it really puts you on edge knowing you got, go another clean 20 laps.
Yeah, McMillan, a driver that was in a must-win situation if he wanted to move on to playoffs. I think this might have taken out his chances here. As we take an overview look, as you see the carnage in front of him gets wild, hectic, and nowhere really to go for that machine. Ooh, just able to sneak by, except for there was the 42.
Yeah, and that's always the nightmare at these super speedways is you're going through the wreck, you're like, I'm good, and then all of a sudden somebody just pops out of somewhere, right, and clips you. That's what I think Trawick, that was running through his mind when he went through the grass, because yeah, it's safe to go through there, but all it takes is one person getting sent down there, or maybe sent back up, if you will, and then craziness happens.
And we're sounding disappointed at this moment just because there was caution and they were involved. But all what we're really sad about is the fact that they no longer have that fast repair to save in their back pocket for later on if they get involved in another wreck. So a lot of drivers were caught up and had engine issues, and some drivers actually had to teleport their cars. Parker, Jones had to as well. So those cars are still in pit road trying to get repairs done, and they're going to be multiple laps down at this point. I mean, the 25 of Dylan Parker, he was running up front, got shuffled to the back, now running 3 laps down and just still trying to get towed back to pit road.
Yeah, it's up break, especially if we highlight a guy like him where not necessarily going to make the playoffs, so you're just racing, for pride, trying to get a win in a league that, just from a pure trying to win week-to-week standpoint is tough. I mean, people always feel like super speedways are, a kind of a lucky thing, if you will, but when you really break it down, especially in a series like this, when they race them every week, you can see the talent that, separates some of these guys that are able to win, either the race or win multiple weeks even.
Well, with this caution coming out and where drivers are at fuel-wise, I don't think they can make it to the end. This might be a splash and go type of a moment for these drivers if we stay green to the end. But Tyler, I don't think we're going to be staying green to the end due to the fact of this timing of this caution.
Yeah, and honestly, if I was any of those drivers right there under this caution, I would have definitely topped off just because I think it's going to be close. You mentioned splash and go. You could probably save a little bit more than you think if you would have topped off and then, you stay here in the draft. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys react knowing that the caution was kind of streak was broken there.
Our front two, Robbie Lyons and Lucas Cram, did not pit under that caution. Everyone else did. We'll see when they have to react, because They've been out there for 15 laps now. They're going to have to possibly pit here in the next about 10 laps or less for these drivers.
Definitely a gamble for those two, but they're one of the more secure drivers. Cram pretty much locked in. Lions has a decent points margin to maybe take this gamble, but I don't know if how comfortable they're going to feel about it here in about 10 laps if we don't get the yellow.
Yeah, I mean, they're still saying side by side at the moment, but once you get into that 20 laps to go marker, I mean, if you come into the pits, you're not going to go a lap down due to the fact that everyone is so close to one another. Do you maybe pit early so that that you're good? So if a late caution if a caution comes out, you don't have to pit again?
Oh, absolutely. I think once you hit, as you mentioned, about lap 60, 61, you're good fuel window-wise at that point. I'd say maximize your strategy by not only coming in early, make sure you don't take tires. You don't need them. It's night Daytona race. Tires are not going to be that effective. Saves you a lot of time and really helps ensure, as you're talking about, that you don't go a lap down. That way you can play for your strategy that you are, just making sure you try to catch that caution.
As the drivers coming down the backstretch, I mean, we've only got 2 drivers that did the strategy of staying out, so they're now going to be asking for their friends, if anyone's listening, to please follow them when they come into the pits, because if it's just the 2 of them, they're going to be losing a lot of times to this front pack that's just going to be pulling away from them throughout this run.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, Sam, to see, you're seeing a little bit of a split pack going on here with this front pack, and then that second pack led by Shane Howell, just kind of a little bit off of the front pack. How many of those guys are just sitting back there, counting their fuel, if you will, and just saying, okay, how much do I need to save here? I think this could turn into a fuel mileage race as long as we stay green, something we haven't been able to say kind of throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, and back in the second group, you got Treywick. You also got others to watch out for that are running back here. You've got Brady Floyd. That's another driver that's going to be needing to push forward. Interesting to see that some of these drivers are going to need to start moving out front and possibly in must-win scenarios if they run very similarly to the drivers that they're going to be around trying to beat. Remember that it's the 5 machine that these drivers are aiming for to pass of Kyle Manger. That's going to be the driver that's right on that bubble spot that could be knocked out.
Yeah, and you had a lot of guys you mentioned, Treywick, but also Floyd, McMillan, those guys all within about 5-7 points of Manger. So really, there's a lot to gain for them to make sure that they finish this one strong. Although Manger, give him credit. You come into a race like that, and you're the bubble guy. You got to have a good night. So far, Manger has done, I think, everything just about right. Finished second in the stage, has made sure he stayed up front, kind of make sure he's trying to be in control of his own destiny.
Now, the main issue for Manger, because he's been up front almost every race, is once we come to 20 laps to go after the final pit stop, chaos ensues where the 5 car is caught up or has a mistake on pit road that shuffles him back. So kind of needs to be perfect and avoid contact with anyone else if he wants to make sure he can point his way into the final 12, or just hope that, if he's going to do that, Blake Treywick has to be outside of the top 20. Otherwise, it's looking rough for this 5 car if Treywick somehow points his way into the top 20 here.
Yeah, and that's something to look at that we don't quite have here. So Treywick coming in, the guys in front of him, mind you, to the 20th spot. It was the 16 points back, and that was McDonald and Muma. They were tied for that. So Treywick's kind of eyeballing those guys, because all he needs to be, he doesn't have to, go win the race. Just got to gain enough points to pass those guys. As it stands, McDonald running P22, Muma way back there a bit. He's back there at 13th. So something to monitor there for Treywick for sure. He knows kind of what he's got to do at the end of this thing. But with only 28 trucks, as we highlighted earlier, that does not leave a lot of wiggle room for him to just kind of lay back too much.
No, it really doesn't. You also got Gingrich, another driver that could be moving up and possible chance of winning this race. Has been running up in the top 10 for most of this race, but right now running back in 17th place. But Mitchell Muma, who we haven't really talked about that much the last couple of weeks, but this 40 machine, he was quick in the first half of the season, but really kind of started to taper off. Right now running in 13th place. Interesting to see where Muma goes in this 40 machine.
Yeah, and there's, you just mentioned how Manger was part of that group. There's just been a group of guys that for whatever reason, despite being quick, you could maybe even lump Darling in that group of times in that one truck of guys that have shown speed, but then just wrong place, wrong time, get caught up in those incidents, especially late. I just don't know where the incident's going to come from when it does. I feel like we're kind of edging closer to it. I still haven't seen even Cram or Lions pit yet, so I think that's going to decide things. That might cause some shuffle up, because once those two kind of taper off from the front of the pack, it becomes a little bit more of a wobble shootout of, hey, who's going to take control of this thing?
Well, what hurts both those drivers is they're both leading the front groups that they're in, with Cram being on the outside, and then you got Lions on the inside. Lions could easily move down, but Cram, the rest of the field isn't thinking, hey, we need to pit. Probably when we see this 44 car coming to the pits, so he's got to try to find a hole to drop down and possibly get in, but he's leading that outside group. They're really not moving anywhere except for staying put.
Well, and you could see, I think, and this played a factor last week with trying to make sure that nobody took the lead using the inside to outside move, but maybe he's dragging the brakes a bit just to try to hold up that outside line and dissipating. Sure enough, look, he found a spot because of that.
And also, you saw there wiggling a little bit was going to be as a group's coming in.
Whoa,
boy. A couple of cars swinging it wide there, but able to come into the pits is the 44, the 5, the 97, and other drivers coming in the pits. Everyone looks like they were good on pit road. But up front, I mean, it's going to be Brandon Hoff leading the way, but a lot of drivers right now. 2 cars really pulling away from this front group. That's going to be Hoff and Darling, as everyone that was around them all came into the pits.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned, Lions and Cram having some help in terms of, saying, hey, let's pit together. And sure enough, they got a decent group of guys. That'll be interesting to monitor. But yeah, Hoff and Darling up front. Then look who's come up behind him, Spillman, and then the pole here, Alex Fox. You mentioned he is must win at this point. He's got to get it done. So if I'm Fox at this point, I think you need to make your move, get up front, lead this thing, and just hope you kind of hold on.
And right now on the outside, it's going to be Lucas Strayer going to be trying to work with the 81 of Jeremy Jones. Jeremy Jones, first car 1 lap down, needing a caution or just to do it the hard way and unlap himself by being the first car up front, as this 81 machine leading that outside group. A car has officially DNF'd. That's going to be Dylan Parker, who is done and has parked his car for the day.
Yeah, tough break there for Parker, but you mentioned Jeremy Jones getting it the hard way. We just saw Shane Howe hold on to make sure he stayed on the lead lap, and I think this is type of that race where maybe a guy like Jones could get it done here.
Yeah, and Jones right now is a driver that's a little bit outside of the bubble, actually ahead of Blake Trawick in the points battle, he's right now, just outside of the top 20. If this 81 machine gets on the lead lap, then we get a caution, and then we could see what Jeremy Jones has to possibly win to get himself into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what's very curious about the end of this race, is knowing that there's legitimately 8 guys or so that could maybe sneak their way in and kind of rip it out of you're talking about Manger potentially being one of those guys where it's just ripped from him a bit, but I'm still not sure if these guys are good the rest of the way on fuel. They're acting like they are, Sam, and we figured when they pitted, it'd be close, but as you mentioned earlier, might come down to type of a splash and go situation. If that's the case, those guys that just put in the Lions and Cram and the few other guys, that's a big get for them.
Yeah, you have to be thinking that these drivers are going to have to do a splash and go.
Contact there with Floyd, and I believe that was Christopher Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis is going to be shoved up as they continue to be shuffling everywhere. That's going to be Trawick that gets off the track. Needs to figure out how to get back on. Is almost before the change. And that's going to be right in front of Gingrich, who's a driver that's trying to make some moves here. But, that's a little bit of shuffling that almost brought us.
There they go.
There goes Lewis, as well as, I believe that's going to be Gingrich, who a lot of these drivers were already part of cautions already.
Ben McDonald as well, unfortunately, is going to get nailed in this one. It was those 3 trucks. It was Lewis and Gingrich caught together, and then all of a sudden McDonald nowhere to go in that. Tough break for him, tough break for Gingrich. And Lewis and Gingrich are still trying to kind of figure things out. You saw Trawick, as you mentioned, just kind of sneak his way back on track. Bit of a messy situation there, and that is not the caution Well, maybe it is a caution that Cram and them wanted to see, because now they probably know they're good to go on fuel. They'll be able to stay out under this caution, retake their leads.
Yeah, they could just stay out, save fuel. As you saw there, the carnage of Lewis, Gingrich, and McDonald being involved in that. McDonald still able to run, did not blow the engine like others around him. This also helps Jeremy Jones, that 81 machine that was on the outside. He's going to be getting the lucky dog and going to be put on the lead lap here. So interesting to see all the drivers that are now shuffling around as we're getting prepared for pit stops here. Tyler, everyone's coming in that needs fuel. We saw that group come in early. Do you think that the cars that, is there really any place that you're going to be safe, as when we go green again, it's going to be less than 10 laps to go?
Yeah, there's no safe place, quote unquote, at this point. The key thing is guys like you mentioned, Jeremy Jones getting that huge break. He did come over the driver chat, the driver radio, and basically say thank you, Chris Sawyer, for pushing him up there, or Lucas Sawyer, excuse me, or Strayer. I'm saying Sawyer. Good grief. But thanks Strayer for what he did to get him up there and put him in that first car lap down spot. So now he's got a chance, and there's just a lot of hungry guys that all of a sudden they're going to be having to try to get the lead. So this is going to be chaotic. Less than 10 to go.
Less than 10 laps to go here, and the NS service last chance at Daytona. This was the Daytona 200 for these drivers, and it's wild to see the fact that there's so much carnage that has happened. Some drivers that were involved in that last accident, I think their nights might be done here with all the fast repairs that have been used so far. I'm interested to see, though, as McDonald was involved in that, came in. I don't think he got too much damage where he feels worried, as he came in, got a little bit of repairs done, got the fuel, and got back out there.
I'd be surprised if, unless he might already use his fast repair, but from what I saw in that replay, Sam, and maybe he got more lucky than I thought, but it looked like he took a very hard shot to the nose.
Yeah, I think he might have still had a fast repair based off that contact, because that damage is gone.
Right, and for him, hey, not the worst scenario, right? If you're going to use a fast repair, it's going to be late, and that's fine as long as you're able to stay on the lead lap. But hey, you got a chance, just like Rada we saw last week, right? Navigate your way through a wreck. You never know what's going to happen, but
yeah, that was crazy last week with the way that Rada got through all that carnage and was there at the end. I threw out his name because he was a car that just lingered in the back all race long. There was a potential chance that he could be making a final push, and it really was him just surviving the carnage around him that put him in the top 5 position last week. Wonder who else is going to be that driver that's just been lingering in the back, maybe waiting. I think Derek Stanley might be a driver that's on my radar of cars that kind of just lingering and waiting for their chance to make a move forward.
One for me is going to be the 21 Jacob McMillan. We talked about how close he was to Mager for that 12th spot coming into this one. You got to think he's going to be a guy that pushes and tries to get himself into that win spot, because he did get stage points. Didn't really gain much ground there, so he's pretty much in a much win. And just to confirm as well, based off the replay, McDonald did use the fast repair under this caution. He definitely took a hard shot in that wreck. So definitely a few guys out there that cannot afford to get another wreck, and I think a few guys are just winging it a little bit with damage. So, but how about that 5 up front right now, Kyle Mager? We'll see how aggressive he is in trying to hold this, because, hey, if you're in the bubble spot, why not secure it with a nice win here before the playoffs? Yeah,
if Kyle Mager gets the win, somehow Blake Trawick gets himself into the top 20 in points. Whoever is going to now get that 11th position is the car that's going to get bumped out, if that's the crazy scenario that we're in at this moment, where Jared Darling, Lucas Strayer, Robbie Lyons, or even Kobe Wells or Spillman, they're so close to that bubble spot of 11th place, they could be knocked out of this thing if we see someone that's 2 cars that are outside trying to get a win in.
Yeah, and that's what's made this series so fun, is just kind of monitoring all that. And then obviously these guys, man, I cannot speak enough of just how they get it on these super speedways.
As the drivers are getting set up here, coming out of 4, we're going to be going green here with 9 laps to go It's going to be a wild one here in the SARG Superspeedway League. It's been a fun season so far. The regular season about to come to an end. Playoffs, who's going to make them? Green flag back in the air, 9 laps to go.
Nick Olson spun his tires a bit on that outside line. That's going to stack him up very quickly in the inside. Look at the push by Lucas Graham right now.
Lucas Graham wants to get to the, really, I think he's setting up here out of 2 to possibly try to make a move, but it looking like Nick Olson, he might be there right at the quarter panel, and coming hard on the outside comes that 24 machine of Nick Olson, who's looking for another win this season. Last time he won was back at Daytona for week number 3. He's got a chance here in this 24 machine.
We'll really know kind of how Kyle's skills are in terms of managing as a leader, because we talked about last week, one of the things that was going on, Sam, you didn't see a lot of those inside to outside then take the lead moves because guys up front were dragging a bit of the brake, and Hoff was the one mainly doing it, being very successful at it. Is Kyle Mager in the 5 going to take the same type of notes, or it's tough because you got to make sure that outside line doesn't get a big enough run.
That outside line looks very strong. I'm looking at some of the cars that are in the middle of that outside line that could possibly be making a push and try to go 3 wide. Alex Fox as well as Jared Darling lined up and could be moving up to the outside. They're very quick trucks. Have been all season long. I think they're the 2 that are lined up and have a chance to possibly duck to the outside and try to make a charge on the 3rd lane.
You're starting to see that little bit of wiggling go on. So what's happening is, there they go.
Down they go. Fox involved. Darlene, Spillman, and others continue to wreck on the front stretch.
Oh, is Alex Fox going to suffer a heartbreak once again? Being in a spot.
Fox needing a solid run, needing a win. Derek Newsom, excuse me, he was involved in that wreck. As Nick Olson's engine's gone.
There's not a lot of clean trucks left at that point. Wow. What just in the tri-oval. And it looked like it was just a bit of a rough push from the 50 and Newsom. Maybe, one of the big rules is do not push in the tri-oval, especially at Talladega, but Daytona it can still apply, and I think that's what caused it there.
It was coming out of 4, and it just hit on hit on the quarter panel, and that's what caused all that carnage where everyone was involved.
Yeah, just caught. It's one of those situations where they're coming off the corners, so Olson maybe sits himself a bit wide to maximize, the outside momentum, and Newsom didn't really follow him very well, and they just hooked those bumpers, and then it's just over from there. Saw Jordan Clark get involved. Kobe Wells will be an interesting one of the monitors, Sam, because he was only a point ahead of lines coming into this. So you mentioned that battle for the 10th spot. It's gonna be real tough.
The 81 also involved, and I believe he already used the fast repair.
Yeah, Jeremy Jones definitely, I think, had burnt his already. Yeah, he just parked it, by the way. Jeremy Jones did, unfortunately, taking it behind the wall. His night.
That's an ultimate high to a drastic low for that 81 machine that went and it was pushed to being on the lead lap, got the caution he needed, had a chance here at the end, and now snuffed out for Jeremy Jones's chances here of racing into the playoffs. But this is now taking away a lot of positions with this wreck, and a lot of cars going to be getting repairs done. If we have a lot of cars that are 1 lap down, that you need to really are buffers between other machines that are trying to gain points. This is massive for them later on in this race.
Speaking of trying to gain points, we mentioned how Jeremy Jones was one of those guys sitting in the trade week that was just outside the top 20. Hadn't had the win, but you mentioned getting the lap back and then all of a sudden having a shot. Guess who was 1 point behind Jeremy Jones coming into tonight? It was Chris Sawyer. So now Sawyer gets the lucky dog here, has a clean truck. He's in the same spot all of a sudden that Jeremy Jones had just found himself in. And with all those trucks that just got knocked out, boy, he's got a lot of not so much of a field to work through here.
Sawyer in that 42 machine has been almost a lap down all race long, methodically waiting for this time to strike here. 4 cautions here today, one of those being the stage caution. And I mean, Tyler, with the fact that, it's all about points, it's all about being up front, possibly getting the win to get in, the intensity level is only going to rise, and driver is going to be making that really no longer giving, and it's all take from here on out.
Oh yeah, and we mentioned the last 10 laps there definitely would be crazy. This restart, about to be wild, folks. I mean, you got so many guys just trying to find a way in. I mean, Stephen Galen at 52, he's a guy that was right in that group of, maybe a little bit further back behind the 12th spot of Manger, but he still has a shot now. Seeing Kyle up front, he wants to, take away that win from Kyle and all of a sudden leapfrog him. So Brett Murphy's up here again. I mean, there are so many storylines of guys that can potentially just get themselves into that spot and kind of snatch away a playoff spot here.
Yeah, I mean, you threw out the name of Jake McMillan, someone to watch out for. Going to be starting in 7th place. And then you've also got yourselves, Ben McDonald, another driver that's in the top 20 looking for a win here. I mean, there's a lot of drivers that have the potential of with a win, they get in and will be pushing Kyle Manger out of this spot that he's kind of left stranded in. Kyle Manger needs a win, and that's the only way that he will secure his position into the playoffs. Otherwise, he's basing off where drivers are going to be finishing at the end of this race, and it's not looking very good right now. Blake Trawick up to 12th place easily can make a move to the front, but like we've seen at Talladega and a lot of these other tracks, it's not over until the final lap.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. The big thing for Trawick all of a sudden is the fact that McDonald is still up here running strong. That kind of really limits how much spots Trawick could gain in terms of trying to hop into that top 20 that we're talking about. It would take basically McDonald wrecking out at this point for Trawick to have a shot to get himself into the top 20. And then, not to mention, all the guys we just talked about there of being in that 11th through 20th spot, trying to get a win and just secure one of those wild cards.
Well, we're going to have 4 laps to go here in the SARG Superspeedway Series. We'll see who can get it done. If we're even going to finish it here, we'll go to a green-white checkered at the end of this thing. It's still looming, it's waiting, but green flag up in the air for the NS Service. Last chance, 200 here at Daytona.
Back of that outside line, not the best in terms of getting together. It looked like somebody might have been a little bit down on horsepower and just didn't get a good start. That being said, 2x2 up front here. And does Cram get real aggressive and swiping away this one for the 5? You got Steve Miguel, we mentioned him in that 52. Who makes the move first, Sam?
I mean, right now, I think the driver that's going to be the best pusher right now up front, I mean, that might be Lucas Strayer. He pushed that car up to the front. 3 wide for the lead, though, as Brandon Hoffs decides, I'll make the move by myself.
I think it was a bit of Hoff wanted to make the move, but also that Murphy kind of shoved him up there just a bit. And, hey, another guy to watch out for is that 27, Alex Fox. We thought he was done. Thought he had already burnt his fast repair. Apparently not. He's still in this front pack trying to get it.
Also a car that's drifting up and down. That's going to be the 11 of Brett Murphy that is really making some aggressive moves that it's kind of a little bit nerve-wracking. 3 laps to go for these drivers, as it's going to be Stephen Gall who's going to be outside of the top 12, but in that position, if he gets a win, he's locked into the playoffs.
That'd be an ultimate snatch right there for sure. Been one of those guys that's had some rough luck all season. Oh, Manger getting a little sideways off a tough push by Jacob McMillan. Oh, and Strayer getting first.
And others being caught up. That was Kobe Wells that was caught in caution before, and this is looking like a Strayer still flipping, sliding on his roof, and now on all 4s. But this is terrible for some of these drivers. Did Blake Trawick get involved?
I'm going to have to check that. I know Nick Olson took a big shot from that one. He's probably thankful at this point he's locked in because he has caught some bad breaks tonight for sure.
Strayer, who was looking very strong, but coming out of turn number 2, it's just a lot of shuffling up front. As you'll see here on the replay, I mean, cars bouncing up and down. Manger made some contact with Murphy, and then away Strayer goes after being clipped. And Strayer flipped up upside down and was sliding on his roof, practically on the whole entire backstretch there. And I think Trawick might have just slowed down a ton and was not even involved in that. He might have gone through the grass there.
Oh, Trawick did the perfect move, just on the brakes and pretty much checked up to the point to where the wreck had completely happened in front of him, and then he's just able to kind of drive around it a little bit.
As you're going to see the caution in front of Trawick here, as he just sees the action start to file out, cars going on the apron, away they go, and just backing it down and just letting them wreck, and then says, oh, I'll go into the grass. I've done it before, and good away from that damage. Well, Tyler, it's time for us to go green-white checkered racing here. How many attempts are we going to have at a green-white checkered?
3 official attempts, folks. And not a lot of clean trucks out there, but a lot to gain for some of these guys. We might have to use all three of them tonight. I think the most we've used all season is just that one. Can't remember a situation where we've gone past the one, maybe at the beginning of the season.
We did. It was, I think the last time that we did might have been the second race at Talladega, where that race ended, I believe, coming to the checkered flag, but caution was flown out of 4. So it's been a while since we've used all 3. That is for sure.
Yeah, now a guy like what's really crazy here is the fact that Robbie Lyons, we saw that 52 of Gale was up front. Lyons managed to find a way to get up to the lead in all that craziness. So now Gale's going to have to work from the outside. Got Britt Murphy in third, Banger right there, and then McMillan. I mean, top 10 just full of guys that are just desperate to get this win.
That was Jordan Clark. That was Jordan just flying through there. Not really just deciding, hey, I'm just going to fly through the outside, getting his lap back. Now going to be putting Clark, the last car on the lead lap, giving us a total of 23 cars on the lead lap, but a lot of machines still in pit road trying to get service done for themselves.
About to say 23 trucks on the lead lap, which sounds good, but there's probably about, half of maybe that, are truly good. So this will be interesting because you're going to have some of these guys, a guy like you just mentioned, Clark. Maybe he's got the clean truck, but then he's got to work through all the slow trucks now to even have a shot in a green, white, checkered situation. Another guy like that might be the 38 of Sean Howell a little bit. He's back in 10th, but maybe has 1 or 2 trucks that are a little bit slow in front of him. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, this is going to be a lot of shuffling. I wouldn't be surprised, Sam, if by the time we get down into 1, you're going to see 3 wide in a couple spots.
Yeah, I'm really not going to be surprised either. But what we saw in that last restart, like you said, cars are heavily damaged. That outside lane did not get going because there was a car down on power that just did not go, which stalled everyone out. And now we're seeing everyone stack up. Robbie Lyons deciding to go on the inside lane, going to be working with Brett Murphy. And Murphy's been aggressive in this 11 machine, but he kind of has to, in a kind of a position where he has to win based on where the 5 is at the moment.
Yeah, and that's, the nature of the beast, right, is that some of these guys who are generally, I wouldn't say anybody in this league I've seen be a dirty driver, maybe over-aggressive, right? But at this point in the season, with so much on the line, somebody like Murphy's been pretty calm throughout most of the season is just going to say, well, hey, I got to look out for myself here. If the move sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, oh well.
Yeah, how much are these drivers going to evolve from playing nice for the first 3 races to now your last chance to get into the playoffs? Hey, I'm tired of getting ran over, pushed out of this track. I'm going to be the one making my path here to win this race. And a lot of these drivers thinking that. Alex Fox in 7th place, Jacob McMillan in 6th place, and a lot of drivers up here. Steve Gall's also in the 52, running in 2nd at the moment. A lot of these front runners are drivers that are outside of the top 12, trying to get a win to win themselves into the playoffs.
And especially in this top 5, folks, it is about to get dicey on this restart. Really, Grant, the only guy that's, not necessarily racing for anything, if you will, in this top 5, top 6. So looking about maybe about 15 trucks or so that are up here in this pack to start it, maybe a bit more. So here we go.
First attempt at a green-white checkered is about to get underway for the NS Service Last Chance 200 here at Daytona for the SARG Superspeedway Series. Who's going to be making their way into the playoffs? We already know 5 drivers. Who's going to be the rest of the 7?
Good push by that outside. Colin Banger trying to get Steve Gale up there, which, I think mainly just to try to get it back ahead of him because you do not want to give Gale a win in this situation.
No, you really don't. At this moment, make yourself be the car that's leading the pack. As another car that's going to be on the outside, that's going to be Brandon Hoff. Already has a win here this season.
There they go.
Oh, there goes Robbie Lyons. And they're scattered on the outside. It's the whole entire field going to be involved in this one practically.
Oh, my goodness. Manger had got Gale up just a bit in that second line and snuck his nose in there. And Gale, I don't know if he realized that Manger's nose was there, and that's what caused that contact. And all of a sudden, another big wreck right up front. Brett Murphy involved, unfortunately. Alex Fox may have snuck his way through it. A couple guys maybe dodged a little bit there.
There was so many cars just involved in that wreck. It's hard to tell who is making it through. Also, want to make the correction that Hoff has not won yet this season, so that was a mistake on my part. He has locked his way in just based off of fantastic finishes for himself.
Taking the Matt Kenseth route, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
you don't have to win a title. You just got to be good. He's been good.
Might as well put in the best effort here at the end of these races, and it's been awesome to see as we're trying to get this replay underway for you, as it was just carnage for all of these drivers.
I'm trying to really spot if anybody made it through, snuck their way through here. Oh boy, yeah, Robbie Lyons took an absolute ride though.
Yeah, I mean, Robbie Lyons took the hardest lick coming through this spot right here on the backstretch. Just nowhere to go, really. Just getting clipped by the 55. Murphy was on the inside. Murphy gets spun around, and everyone else just scattering through the grass, really, at the end.
Yeah, Murphy, unfortunately, definitely an innocent bystander. Took the initial contact, thought he was going to be clear, and then the 52 just gets spun down into him. Look at the view from Alex Fox here, if you get a chance, Sam. I think he did make it through clean somehow right there.
I mean, we're seeing the blimp view. He got clipped just barely for a second, and then able to just keep on driving through the grass. Darling had to go through the grass, as well as Treywick. I mean, it looked way... I mean, there were a lot of cars involved in this wreck, yes, but the way that everyone scattered, it looked way worse than it really was.
Well, and it could have been way worse, right? I mean, we got guys scattered like that and a truck in the air. You never know what's going to happen in terms of somebody getting sent down from the top or whatever. And unfortunately, it looks like Jacob McMillan, he has put it behind the wall after that wreck. That was a big blow. That was the guy that was the closest to that 12th spot coming into this one. And obviously, his chances now going to end here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob McMillan, someone that we've seen have some very solid runs just periodically throughout the season, but he's been caught up in a lot of bad luck and incidences where it was never his fault. An innocent bystander and a victim of a lot of these wrecks that just start to come up at the end of these races. But Tyler, getting set up for our second attempt here. I mean, really nothing's going to change much. I think everyone's going to be making the same moves, being quite aggressive. But, I mean, there's now a few drivers that are already inside the top 10 now that really are fighting for nothing at this moment except for just having a good win. Well, you got Alex Fox, Manger, and a couple other drivers that are in, I have to win this race and make sure I'm in.
Yeah, well, and Manger now with all those wrecks, really, you mentioned that he's just got to play defense so much, right? Like, Fox isn't going to catch him on points. So as long as Fox doesn't win the race, that's kind of his big concern. I don't think, being behind Fox on this restart, he's going to be third. Or Fox is going to be third, Manger's going to be fifth. Do you think Manger would kind of just lay off a little bit to make sure that Fox doesn't get a good run? I mean, when we talk about mind games, folks, this is what we're talking about. These spots are on the line. You got to really make sure that you're helping the right guy for yourself, so to speak, at the end of a race like this.
I mean, it's so hard to make that type of a decision to really hold back, because if you lay off too much and try to hold the car back behind you, you can be passed by a lot of machines. And honestly, you could be putting yourself in danger of the cars behind you taking off way before you did and just running you over. So there's that. That's the toss-up between if you want to really mess with the driver or not. But, just keeping our eyes out as our front two. I mean, somehow they're still running up here of Hoff and Cram, and they just seem to always be up front when it comes to the end of these races.
Yeah, and quick correction on my part. Mager is actually back in 16th because he had to take his fast repair. So he's got some work to do all of a sudden now, but he's in a bit of a dangerous spot. The right guy finishes up here, all of a sudden he's kicked out, maybe even by points. So going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, drivers I've been just keeping my eye out on and watching them slowly move up. That's going to be Mitchell Muma as well as Blake Treywick, both those drivers looking to make some big moves here at the end of this race, as well as Gingrich in that 48 machine in 8th place. A lot of these drivers that are around the top 10 window are drivers that are going to be running extremely hard here at the end.
Right, and another guy I'm watching in that, Shane Howe, in that 38. I mean, we mentioned earlier how he had scrapped to stay on the lead lap, had done it. He's in an interesting spot to maybe pick himself up a win here.
But this is going to be another try for these drivers. Second attempt at the green-white checkered as we get set to see who's going to be winning this NS Service Last Chance 200 here at Daytona to figure out who's making it into playoffs. It's coming across the line. It's going to be Lucas Cram, Brandon Hoff leading the inside and outside lane.
See what Fox does. He's getting a good push for Cram on the inside, but look at Spillman getting an absolute send there for Brandon Hoff on the outside.
Yeah, and Brandon Hoff getting a huge run, almost pushing up too high on that outside line, but now he's going to have space. Does he drop down, or do they try to get as much gap to possibly come down? A driver that's going to be all the way on the inside. I believe that's going to be Strayer. That's all the way down there. Spillman, and now we're going to see their Hoff able to make the pass cleanly.
Yeah, getting themselves up front. Then look at Sean Howell, the 38. He's going to jump high, try to take control of that. And look who's pushing it. It's Gingrich and Treywick. What if Treywick can get his way up here again?
Now, I just want to give you a warning as we're coming to the white flag. Our telemetry is not going to be telling you exactly where drivers are until you cross the line.
Oh, back.
Will the yellow come out? We stay green. White flag, go yellow. Oh, just at the last second, yellow flag comes out.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. And, I mean, that was... the wreck started happening coming into the tri-oval. And then the yellow, I mean, that was split second right there. Wow.
I mean, there was... What else could they have thrown? I mean, it was right when the white flag was out. And it was a split decision by iRacing to call that yellow flag as they were coming to the white flag there. This is going to be right now McDonald, who gets caught up with Darling. Looks like Clark also going in the heart of the wall, and this is what brings out our caution. And now, Tyler, it's our last attempt. We questioned, would it happen? It is now, to see who will be making it in.
Yeah, I kind of figured if I was a bed man, I would have definitely put my money on all three attempts being used just because of the situation. But man, that just didn't happen up front, so it didn't change a whole lot of what we were just talking about there situation-wise. But how about Brandon Hoff here? Been battling for that points lead kind of all season long. Has been one of the more consistent guys, obviously. That being said, right, he's still out here trying to hunt for a win. He wants to say, hey, I didn't just point my way in here. I was one of the top guys, and I backed up with a win.
Yeah, and, Brandon Hoff, I made the mistake calling that he won. It's because he's been locked in for a long time based off of points. Yeah. Surprising that this 9 car has not won just because of how well he's been doing. Clint Spillman, another driver that hasn't gotten a win, but up here up front. But, I mean, you talked about it. That 38 machine running in third place of Shane Howell. I mean, this is so impressive. The fact that he had to claw for being on the lead lap, got the caution he needed, and at the stage, and he's just been slowly and methodically moving his way throughout the field. Right now in third place with a chance to win here.
Yeah, I mean, and there's been a couple of those guys. We see it every race. That kind of turns into a story. One guy that we haven't got to talk about a whole lot tonight because he had to start from the pits due to his connection issues. How about Gavin Jones? Was 2 laps down, 3 laps down actually to start this race. And look at him being back up there in 8th place right now.
Yeah, I mean, Gavin Jones, that is so impressive. And honestly, these late cautions have helped so much for this 12 machine to get back onto the lead lap. And Gavin Jones, another driver that has been shows speed very early in these races, then gets caught up in something, and now doesn't have to worry about having green flag pit stops. Just has to run up front. In front of him, you got Blake Treywick, who's looking for a good run just to try to get inside of the top 20 in points. And looking at some of the drivers that he has to beat out, it's looking close, and it's going to be really close to see where Treywick lands, as he was needing a lot of points to find himself inside of the top 20.
Yeah, and he's got some help with Jeremy Jones having issues. A couple of those guys. The big problem for him, though, is that the one guy probably standing in his way at this point, Quentin Gingrich at 48. He was a couple points ahead of Treywick, so as long as Gingrich stays ahead of Treywick, obviously mathematically that means any moving that's going to happen might still leave Treywick a little short in terms of making that top 20. Sawyer's still in play here as well in that 42 a little bit, I believe. I can find him.
Sawyer is running at the moment. We just disappeared on our screen as well.
18th there, it looks like, and has a decently clean truck. So as long as he finishes in the top 15, that's going to kind of be a hurdle for Trey Wick as well there, because that could make it tight. So this could be one of those where, points-wise, depending on who wins, we may not quite know immediately who's going to make that top 12, especially for that last spot.
Yeah, and again, for the audience that are watching here for this finale, our telemetry will not be moving until they cross the line, and then it will be staying the way that it is until they cross the line again. So based off, you're going to be having to see on track which cars are moving up and down, as our telemetry will be updated once they cross the line, as we're getting set for this final attempt here for the NS Service Last Chance 200 here at Daytona, part of the SARG Superspeedway Series. This is going to be a wild one, Tyler. Who do you got?
Man, I don't even know if I want to make a call at this point. I like what Hoff has done to get himself up here late and try to assert that and just control his own destiny. But, it's still anybody's game in this top 5, I truly believe.
And it's going to be wild for sure. Green flag back in the air. This is our final attempt to figure out who's going to be making it into the playoffs. 5 drivers already locked in when we started. We're going to see who are the final 7 to make it in, as it's going to be Brandon Hoff, Clint Spillman leading the inside and outside row, coming into 1 and 2.
No real advantage for either line there on the restart. Pretty even. The outside line may be a bit more lined up, but that's harder to make sure you don't have issues there on that outside. I've seen it a couple times. Who's going to get the run off? It might be Spillman here.
Spillman getting a huge run right now by Cram, and got to continue to get this run very similar to what we saw Hoff and Spillman do on that last restart, but not enough pushing being made. Alex Fox going to be on the outside, also Darling and others, as they're kind of clogging up at the moment. It's that inside row. It's 3 cars that are really hooked up and ready to keep on moving forward as we're coming to the white flag.
Yeah, Hoff, Hal, and Gingrich really doing a great job on that inside. Look at the push down the straightaway. We've taken the white flag, and look at Trey Wick at the 56. He might be in a spot here to sneak up there.
Does Howell make the pass here on the exit of turn 2, or does he wait for the exit off of turn 4? Because he's going to have the best opportunity right now to just throw it onto the outside and try to make the pass here on the 9, as it looks like Howell will stay put. Now it's that outside row. Will they have anyone that can make a pass?
Gingrich and Treywick are trying, but they're not really getting, there's no help, no momentum out there. It's getting a bit dicey. Are they going to be able to get together to get a run here, all 4? I don't know if they can. It might be come down to Sean Howell to be able to make that move like you're talking about. Here he goes.
Howell coming on the outside. Is he going to have the most momentum, though, as no one comes with them, as we're seeing Gingrich on the inside? But it looks like it's going to be Howell. Hoff gets a bump. Here comes Spillman and others, but it's going to be Brandon Hoff across the line as they all come scattering and flipping behind them.
Oh, my goodness. What a scene there at the line. That was crazy. I mean, there was at least, I think Hoff might have been the only truck to finish straight across the line right there.
I believe so, but the question is, who's left standing as the drivers are where they are result-wise? Brandon Hoff, we know he won the race. Howell's going to get 2nd place. Spillman 3rd. Treywick's going to get 4th. Gavin Jones in 5th place is still scattering through to figure out where drivers are finishing. But where will the points be, as really at this point, calculators are out to figure out where drivers are at?
Yeah, I am searching here, and I will let you know. I mean, just the issue is really that Gale and Murphy having their late issues, that kind of took away a chance of maybe somebody jumping, although Gale was 15 points out. He only finished, about 5 spots ahead, 6 spots ahead. No, 5 spots ahead of Manger there. Manger might have still found his way into this one, honestly. Looking at McMillan, we know, had issues. He's back at 23rd. Brady Floyd, another guy, was right there. He was out. Brett Murphy, where did he wind up finishing here officially? He was only a couple spots ahead of Manger, so there you go. It depends on the stage points, too, because there was a couple of those guys that got stage points. But I think Manger might have got himself in. And, then, of course, Darling as well in that 11th spot, having a huge lead on Manger. And the 12th spot at Journal, I think he's fine. So after all that craziness and the dust settles, nothing may have really changed from coming into tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, though. When you come into these nights, you really never know where drivers going to finish. We're going to take on board with a cockpit view of the driver that went flipping and scattering at the end. This is Lucas Strayer coming across the line as everyone is ducking and weaving. As Tyler was talking, we saw the blimp view of this accident, but here's how the 41 went for a ride around the track as just flipping, and that was the second time we've seen Strayer flip here tonight, and somehow finishing in 12th place there.
Oh boy! By the way, while I'm looking at these points, another interesting thing to note: Kyle Dagger in the 2, who was 18th, did not make a start tonight. That's lost points. McDonald had issues. He was 19th, and tied for 19th with him was Muma. Muma did finish inside the top 10. I think, if the calculations are correct, Treywick might have wound up about 21st or 22nd and maybe just barely missed that opportunity to get himself in.
As we're now going to look at the final results here, the playoff is going to be looking very scattered here just because of the way that the points work. But here's our top 10. Brandon Hopp, Howell, Clint Spillman, Blake Treywick, Gavin Jones, Gingrich, Stanley, Sawyer, Muma, and Gal going to be getting your top 10 here for this race. And then you go to 11th through 12th, Lucas Cram, Strayer, Murphy, Fox, Manger, Darling, Lyons, Clark, Rada, and Wells. I mean, Tyler, these was a scattering, and really no one knew where they were going to finish at the end of this race just because of how much chaos there was at the end.
Yeah, it just, I mean, similar to last week, right? Knew it was going to come down to the final laps right there. And maybe not as tight of a finish, with Hoff being kind of the de facto guy at the line, but just so much on the line for every other guy out there. Kind of left in that top 10, and it's been fun watching this go on all season. This is just the regular season, Sam. I mean, think about the playoffs. That's going to get even crazier.
It certainly is. As a driver that's in the waiting room at the moment, it's 3rd place, Clint Spillman. We're going to be bringing him in here for interviews as the rest of our top 3 getting ready for interviews as well. Clint, Sam, and Tyler up in the booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you. How about that finish?
Oh, that was a wild one, as we really didn't know who was going to be winning it until Brandon Hoff was the one that got through all that mess. But take us through that final attempt there at the green, white, checkered from your point of view.
Well, I was talking to Brandon before because we had a deal on the last restart, and we were able to clear Cram. So we're like, I was telling him, do you want high or bottom? Because remember what happened last time? The bottom guy got passed. So when he chose bottom, I was excited. I felt like we were going to be able to get by him, but Cram, I think, just had too much damage, so we weren't able to complete it. And then that whole next lap, I'm like 5-6 truck lengths back, just thinking, gosh, I just need to salvage just the top 10. And then some shuffling started happening going into 3 and 4. I got some draft from Sean, and heck, I went to the 3rd lane, and I brought it home 3rd. I was like, holy crap. I thought I was 10th coming to the line, and they all started wrecking, and just looking at the replay, I think I made the right move, and that's a great way to be leading into the playoffs.
Yeah, speaking of playoffs, I mean, you guys, there was a couple of drivers that were still kind of in striking distance of possibly being outside of the top 10. Was that ever rattling through your mind coming to the end of this race?
Well, last week when I was interviewed, I mentioned strategy will change throughout this race, and getting 3rd in the stage helped big time because I knew, okay, that's 8 points I locked up compared to where everyone else was. So I knew I could be a little bit more aggressive. I was in that wreck coming with about, I think, to set up the first green, white, checkered. So I was able to use my fast repair then, which sucked because I was more in the back of the pack, but I was slowly working my way back up. And, I was at a point where, we're close enough to the finish where I don't think I'll lose a lot of points, so might as well go for it, and it ended up working out. But, throughout the whole race, on my mind was like, there's people who are around me, where are they? Can I get by them? Because, where you finish in the points can get you some playoff points, and I need every little bit that I can since I don't have a win. So, just tried to stay aggressive all race, and it ended up working out, especially on pit strategy.
Yeah, Clint, at this point now, we've talked a lot about the playoffs tonight, but you've done what you could do. You mentioned you didn't get a win, but you've been one of those guys that I think we'd put in the group of fast enough to win the race. There at the end, luck just hadn't worked out. Going into next week, it's Talladega again. Are the gloves off for you at this point? Is it just kind of, hey, leave it out there on the track? Or are you going to be a little bit mindful maybe for the first round?
I'll probably be a little bit mindful just because I need to see how far away am I from this points lead? Because it can take one race to just really knock you down the pedestal. And if you can just stay in striking distance every week, in and out, and just start gaining slowly, I'd rather get 4 second place finishes than finish last 3 times and get 1 win, because the championship is really all I want. I don't care if I finish second every week, if I finish 10th, whatever gets me the championship is what I want to go for.
Well, Clint, a wild finish for sure for yourself.
Yeah, it was insane. I saw in my rear view, I think it was Strayer up in the air and into the catch fence. So that's definitely a sight to see when you're coming to the end of the regular season.
Hey, Tyler, do you have another question?
Oh, no, you're good.
Well, Clint, like I said, a wild finish for yourself. You're now into the playoffs. But before we let you go here tonight, the floor is yours for any shout-outs.
I just got to shout out that top 3. Me, Sean, and Brandon. I mean, heck of a run we all had there. Kept it clean, helped each other out. And, sad Sean couldn't get the win. He probably wasn't going to get the wild card, but we were thinking, Sean could be a first-time winner here if we could help him out there. But sadly, he got second. But, shout out to them. I don't think I would have been in that position without him.
Well, that's Clint Spillman in the 88 machine. Going to be seeing him in the playoffs here for the next couple of weeks. Getting a third-place finish. Good luck next week there, Clint.
Thank you. It'll be a show.
As now we find ourselves with Shauna Howell going to be up in the booth with us now. Sean, up in the booth, you got Sam and Tyler. Got us?
10-4, loud and clear.
I mean, that was a wild finish to the end there, and we saw that you were the one driver that really had a potential to make a pass there on Hoff, but you just weren't there because everyone else was wrecking behind you. How was it, though, from your point of view?
Yeah, I felt like I had to make a move. I have nothing to lose. I was pretty far down in points, so just trying to go for that win. Went a little bit too early, and outside lane kind of died off, so I just tried to make a quick move forward, and luckily still maintained second after that, but I was probably going to lose a lot more spots if we didn't get all stacked up there at the line.
Yeah, and really, you had probably the move of the race coming to the end of the stage where you had to fight and stay on the lead lap. How was that coming to the end there, trying to stay in front of everyone else?
Yeah, I got to thank Brandon there for keeping me up there. I just tried to hold my line on the inside. The inside had the momentum that whole run, and was just able to keep it up front there, stay on the lead lap, and be able to keep continuing on to get that second place finish.
Now, Sean, you're going to fall a bit short of not being able to make the playoffs here, but you're a guy that has, from what we've seen, been able to kind of hang around most of the race and then maybe present yourself at the end, similar to tonight. Are you just kind of going for that win now from this point on, or are you looking to kind of assert yourself maybe as a contender, kind of rolling just into next season even?
I usually just you gotta have that fast repair near the end of these races, and if not, you don't have a chance to win. So I usually, if I'm racing for points, I'll usually go for it at the end of the stage and near the end of the race. But in those in between spots, I'll usually hang near the back and make sure I have a truck to finish that race.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, an overall wild race from our point of view and probably from yours as well. Before we let you go, the floor is yours for any shout-outs.
Yeah, just thanks for all the guys that were helping me out there that race. Brandon, Clint, and Gavin gave me that big shot at the end there to keep my second place. So I appreciate that as well. So appreciate you guys for the broadcast, and hope you guys have a good day.
Well, that's Howell in the 38 machine, getting a third place finish. Hopefully you have a good race next week. See you later, Sean.
Appreciate it.
And here I got some breaking news for you, Sam, before we bring in our winner. And this is according to the Dan Lisa. We'll have to wait on the official confirmation of this. But according to Dan Lisa, Blake Trawick has just made the 20th position in a tie with Quinn Gendrich. They both have 179 points, but Trawick obviously has the tiebreaker. So if that's true, Kyle Manger did fall short of making the playoffs tonight, got knocked out. If it's not true, if that's not the case, the full case, then Manger did hold on for that 12th spot. But Trawick might have just barely, and I mean barely, got himself in.
Yeah, I mean, that is extremely close. As like you said before the end there, Kyle Dagger did not show up, losing 8 positions. Felt like he didn't have a chance to win, so that's why he didn't show up. But man, wild, as we will continue to try to keep ourselves updated on that. But first, let's talk to our race winner. That's going to be Brandon Hoff. Brandon, it's Sam and Tyler up in the booth. You got us?
I do.
Well, the win finally came. You've been quick all season long, and now you've got the most momentum to carry forward. But how was that final real green-white checkered for yourself?
That was probably the most stressful but entertaining last green white checkered I've been part of, just because I saw in my mirror, I was literally planning out every move they were going to make, whether it was Sean was going to jump to the middle lane on the back, or Clint was going to get the run with Lucas, or whatever it was. But I knew if I held the bottom, I think I was going to get it. So, it was so tough all race. The runs are so huge in these trucks. You can be third or fourth in line, and like the beginning of the backstretch, and by the time you reach turn 3, you'll be the leader. So, it was tough. But man, when that caution came out, the second to last green white checkered, I was so mad because I crossed the line, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. I thought I had it, but all in all, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I wanted to win this so bad, just to get the 1 seed in the playoffs, get a win before it all started, get the momentum, get the bonus points and all that. So I couldn't be happier. Probably the happiest I've been to win a SARG race.
Yeah, I mean, especially with that second to last green-white checker that we had, that late caution was baffling to us when it came out. We were so close of either going white flag or yellow. But like you said, the momentum to carry forward. How does that feel, having the momentum of probably having one of the fastest trucks out here, and now having a win finally under your belt, carrying that into the playoffs?
That's huge. I was getting down the last 2-3 weeks. I've run up front the majority of every race this season, and in the beginning of the season I was getting the finishes, and the last 2 or 3 weeks I've made it to the end, and then just something happens in the last few laps or on the last lap. So it was kind of disappointing, and I was starting to get a little down, just falling back to Lucas and not getting the bonus points I wanted, not leading enough laps and all that. And I went into tonight. Funny story, I got a new router last week, and it wasn't letting me stay in a server for more than 5 minutes for about a week now. And I decided to try to fix it tonight. And about 40 minutes before the race, I did something and I fixed it. So I was really close. I told Lucas before the race, I said, I don't think I'll be able to race. And then about 40 minutes before we gridded, I said, all right, I'm able to stay in the server. So I'm good. But yeah, it's momentum's everything. Feel great. Feel great I got a win. Feel great. I know I don't know if I led the most laps tonight, but I feel like I drove the best race I've driven all season, staying up front, going from the back to the front pretty easily, planning the pit strategy right. Just everything felt right tonight, and I worked with the great people tonight, and the cards just fell in place.
And Brandon, just to let you know, it was Robbie Lyons officially looking at the results, led the most laps tonight.
Yeah, that's okay. Robbie was out
6.
front.
Yeah. But looking forward to the playoffs now. We just talked to Clint Spillman, who he's in, didn't get a win. He's talking about trying to get some of those bonus points heading towards the playoffs. You're going to be a guy now, not only getting this win tonight, but of course, as you mentioned, taking the first seed, if you will, into the playoffs. Is that going to let you maybe be more aggressive here in the first couple of races of the playoffs, or are you, mindset of just taking it, like you've been kind of all season, of just doing what you feel is best here?
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up, because I was thinking if I go into the playoffs second or third, it's kind of a different mindset, because you got to be chasing 1 or 2 guys and not knowing how many points you would be behind, and that's what got me in trouble last season. To start the playoffs, I was already 15 points behind Lucas, or 20 points behind, and I was playing catch up the entire 4 or 5 races in the playoffs. So it's kind of really tough just to have to claw my way there. I got close, but ultimately I finished I think 15, 20 points, and I really gained nothing. So now that I'm the points leader, it helps me control my own destiny, really. And I'm gonna keep doing what I do. I'm not gonna back down. I'm gonna keep trying to win the stages. I'm still gonna try to lead the laps, win the poles. Be aggressive, just play on offense. I'm never really good when it comes to defense, because it seems like when I go defensive, I seem to struggle, and that's when I start to getting the wrecks and all that. But when I foot down to the throttle and all the way, I seem to perform better personally. That's how I feel, and I'm gonna keep that up. really want to win this championship. It's, my third SARG season. I know Lucas has taken it from us twice, or in the 2 seasons I've been a part of it. I'd love to, take the reign and win it. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we got a great shot in the playoffs, or I do. I got a great shot in the playoffs to hopefully take home the championship.
Yeah, and especially with having this win, it's going to help you a ton, Brandon, moving forward. But before we let you go, the floor is yours for any shout-outs.
I got a shout-out first. Clint Spillman, Sean Howell, both of them all race. Clint, especially in the last few laps, Sean too. They helped me a lot win that race. We're trying to plan out what to do, and both of them really did an outstanding job. And I know they finished second and third, so we all got 1, 2, 3 finishes. I'd like to thank Grit Esports owner Kyle Dagger wasn't here tonight, but Nick Olson, Lucas Cram, Luke Strayer, everybody on Grit. We do a good job over there, and I finally was able to bring home a win this season. I'd like to thank you guys, as always, for a great broadcast. I'd like to thank Lucas and Robbie for the great league we have here. I know it turned into a little bit of a wreck fest at the end, but, that's how these races go. But I love the league. I love running with these guys. I love everybody that's in it. So, yeah, I'm pumped right now, and I'm really looking forward to these last few races in the playoffs here.
Well, that's going to be Brandon Hoff in the 9 machine getting a win here at Daytona and carrying that momentum into the playoffs. Good luck there, Brandon, next week at Talladega.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
As Tyler, we're getting set up, still trying to figure out officially what the playoffs are looking like. But based off of where Trawick should be bumping Kyle Menger out. Everyone else stays where they're at. And unofficially, what the playoff stage looks like for these drivers going into next week. It's going to be Lucas Cram, Brandon Hoff, Connor Horn, Alex Bell, Gavin Jones, Nick Olson, Clint Spillman, Colby Wells, Robbie Lyons, Lucas Strayer, Gerald Darling, and Blake Trawick, your top 12 going into the playoffs next week.
And the other factor of that is, too, as you heard Spillman mention, these guys are going to get, bonus points based off where they finished in the regular season. You'll get some win bonus points, some stage points. That will, you may see a guy like Trawick who snuck in, quote unquote, as the last seed. He's actually going to start a bit ahead of some of these other guys potentially just because of all those situations. So that, of course, will be updated next week by the time we get to that. But, man, what a finish. Couldn't ask for a better finish right there from, not only just you watching the points, but just a race standpoint. That's 2 weeks in a row where truly coming out of turn 4, you didn't quite know, who was going to take it. And then, these guys are leaving it all on the line each and every race. It's just been a blast to watch.
Yeah, Howell had a fantastic chance there, and then everyone else started shuffling and not be able to make a move, and Hoff able to get the win there as we're now in the wind down section of this race. Tyler, going into playoffs, it's going to be wild. There's a lot of drivers that have the potential of winning a lot of races here. Like we heard from Brandon, Lucas Cram has been on a roll, getting a lot of championships in the Superspeedway series, and so probably one of the favorites going in. And then you also got Connor Horn, who has 2 wins, as well as Lucas Cram having 2 wins so far this season. But you can't count out Hoff, who just got his win here today, as well as Alex Bell.
Yeah, Alex Bell, another kind of sneaky guy to watch, I think, would be Nick Olson, right? That's another guy that's has a ton of speed. Talk about bad luck. Always seems to be the guy that gets spun, or maybe right behind the guys that get spun. And, everybody else that makes it in, they're saying to themselves, look, I may not have had the wins this season or what have you, but I made it to the playoffs. This is my time. And sometimes, as we know, not only in motorsports, but in sports in general, it's just about peaking at the right time. And there's no better time to start that the next week for some of these other guys.
Yeah, it is really the best time for sure for these playoff drivers, as that is our conclusion here at the NS Service Last Chance 200 here at Daytona for the SARG Superspeedway Series. If you want more information, go to the SARG's SARG's Twitter. They'll be having the updated and official playoff brackets, as well as where drivers have been. It's been a wild regular season for sure. Playoffs start next week at Talladega. And Tyler, like always, thanks for being up in the booth with me.
And like always, you make me look better than I am, Sam. Appreciate it. A lot of fun.
It's been a blast here tonight. A lot of racing carnage. We had to use all 3 of our green-white checkers to see who was going to be the winner. It was Brandon Hoff that got it done in that 9 machine as carnage behind him coming across the line. But for us, the Flatout Racing Network, more racing action continues on throughout the week. Tomorrow night, we've got the Fuel R/Racetrack Designs IndyCar Series having their championship race at Homestead. It's going to be between Riley Thompson and Jason Brophy. It's going to be a close, hard-fought battle between those 2 drivers, as well as we've got our RTG Talladega Series, more Superspeedway racing on the NR side of things. And then on Saturday night, it's the FTF Grand National Series with their finale at Phoenix to see who's going to be winning that championship. But for us here tonight, for the SARG Superspeedway Series, thank you again for watching another presentation of the Flatout Racing Network. And Brandon Hoff gets the win, gets the momentum, but we'll see if he can carry it forward next week for the first race at the playoffs. And we'll have a great rest of your night.